When Australia's most feared inmate was transferred to Casuarina. Like, subscribe, and comment if you ready to step into a story authorities hoped would never be told. Because once these gates closed, there was no turning back. The sirens cut through the early morning silence as the convoy rolled west, headlights slicing the fog that clung to the highway. 2 armored transport vans, 3 unmarked police vehicles, and a helicopter hovering just out of sight. This was not routine. This was containment. Inside the lead van sat a man most officers refused to name out loud. Australia's most feared inmate, being transferred to Casuarina prison under orders that came straight from the top. The decision had been made quietly, after midnight meetings and sealed documents. Officially, the transfer was for security realignment. Unofficially, it was a gamble. The inmate had left a trail of destabilized facilities behind him. Units that fell silent, officers who resigned without explanation, and investigations that never reached the public. Wherever he went, systems bent. Rules eroded. People changed. Senior Corrections Officer Mark Ellery watched the convoy from the control room as it approached Casuarina's outer gate. 20 years on the job, and he had never seen this level of preparation. Tactical teams were positioned along the perimeter. Lockdown protocols were active across 3 wings. Cameras were recalibrated, feeds rerouted, blind spots eliminated. And still, Ellery felt a chill he couldn't explain. The inmate arrived without ceremony. No press, no announcements, just steel doors opening and closing with finality. He stepped out calmly, wrists cuffed, eyes steady. He scanned the yard once, not with fear, but with calculation, like a man memorizing exits in a room he planned to control. Within hours, small things began to shift. A radio channel crackled with interference. A gate sensor flagged an error, then corrected itself. An officer reported a missing key card, later found exactly where it should have been. Each incident alone meant nothing. Together, they felt like a pattern forming. Detective Sarah Klein was notified that evening. She had worked internal investigations long enough to recognize early warning signs. When facilities started reporting coincidences, it usually meant something deeper was unfolding. She requested access logs, transfer authorizations, and the inmates' sealed behavioral assessments. What she received instead was resistance. Files delayed, names redacted, a reminder that this case was sensitive. The first real disruption came 3 days later. During a routine head count, an entire unit fell out of sync. Counts didn't match. Timelines overlapped. Officers swore they'd followed procedure, yet the records told a different story. The inmate was present, accounted for, compliant. And still, the system insisted something was wrong. That night, Ellery reviewed camera footage frame by frame. In one clip, the inmate passed beneath a corridor camera and glanced up, briefly, deliberately, at the lens. The feed glitched for half a second. When it returned, the timestamp jumped forward. No explanation. No alert. Klein received the footage at dawn. She replayed the moment again and again, her jaw tightening. It wasn't the glitch that worried her. It was the look. Recognition. As if he knew exactly how fragile the walls around him really were. By the end of the week, a sealed memo crossed her desk, stamped with a warning she had never seen before. Do not escalate without authorization. Do not document verbally. And at the bottom, a handwritten note from an unnamed official. If this transfer fails, no one walks away clean. But when Klein opened the final attachment, a restricted report buried beneath layers of clearance. What she read made one thing terrifyingly clear. Casuarina hadn't received a prisoner. It had received a catalyst. Rhodes blinked twice, unable to make sense of what he was seeing. Beneath the chain mat, just barely visible under the dim overhead light, lay a small, rectangular transmitter. No bigger than a car key fob, but with a blinking blue light pulsing in an eerie, steady rhythm. It wasn't prison-issued. It wasn't anything inmates should ever have contact with. And yet, there it was, tucked neatly under a prisoner who hadn't moved an inch since the van left Darrington. Harper's throat tightened. Is that a tracker? Rhodes shook his head. Not one of ours. His pulse quickened. Whoever had slipped this into the van had done it with precision. Someone planted this. Someone who knew our exact departure time. The van lurched slightly as the driver adjusted lanes, pulling them away from the dark SUV, still pacing them at an unsettling distance. Harper leaned forward, lifting the edge of the mat a little more. There was no mistaking it. "Get Mullen on the intercom," he said. "Now." But before Rhodes could reach for the mic, the hooded prisoner shifted. Just a small movement. A tilt of the head, but enough to freeze both officers in place. He had been motionless the entire ride. Silent. Almost lifeless. Now, he leaned slightly forward, as if he'd been listening the whole time. "Did he hear us?" Rhodes whispered. Harper swallowed. "Probably." They stayed still, watching him. The van hummed over the road. The SUV tightened its position behind them, and the blinking blue device kept pulsing like a heartbeat. Finally, Harper pressed the intercom. "Captain, we have a situation in van 2. You need to see this." Static. Then a click. Mullen's voice broke through. "Explain." "We found a device under the prisoner," Harper said. "Unknown origin." And, suddenly, the van's left window went dark. A shadow had pulled alongside them. Not the SUV, something else. A second vehicle they hadn't noticed. A matte black sedan that glided so close Harper could reached out and touched it. No plates. Tinted windows. Moving quietly, deliberately. "Mullen," Rhodes said, "we're being boxed in." Before Mullen could answer, the sedan sped ahead, positioning itself between the middle and lead van. The SUV shifted forward too, closing the gap behind them. They were trapped. "Everyone stay calm," Mullen ordered. "Maintain course." But Harper didn't feel calm. The prisoner's head tilted again, barely visible beneath the hood, as if he knew exactly what was happening outside. Rhodes leaned closer. "Who is this guy?" Harper didn't answer. Not because he didn't want to, but because he didn't know. A loud crackle burst through the intercom. Then a voice they didn't recognize. Smooth. Controlled. Definitely not Mullen. "Convoy." The voice said, "Reduce speed." Now. Rhodes stiffened. "Who is that?" "Stay silent," Harper whispered. The voice returned. "This doesn't concern your department. Comply, and no one gets hurt." Hurt? Harper's stomach twisted. This was no rescue operation. No security test. This was something far more calculated. Mullen's voice reappeared, strained. "Do not listen." "Repeat. Do not." His transmission cut off mid-sentence. Harper felt the hair on his arms rise. "They killed comms." Rhodes looked at the prisoner. "What if this whole transport was never about moving him?" "What do you mean?" "What if it was about intercepting him?" Harper froze. Something clicked. The redacted files. The black level classification. The strange hood protocol. The officers reassigned. The convoy ordered to take an isolated farm road instead of the highway. Someone high up wanted this transport to happen under the radar, and someone else wanted to intercept it. The sedan suddenly swerved sideways, forcing the lead van to slam its brakes. The convoy jolted violently, sending Harper and Rhodes stumbling. The hooded prisoner didn't budge. Rhodes grabbed the intercom. "Captain, respond." Nothing. Harper steadied himself and looked again at the blinking device. It blinked once, twice, then turned solid blue. And for the first time since the convoy left Darrington, the prisoner spoke. His voice was low, calm, almost rehearsed. "They're not here for me," he said. Harper's chest tightened. "Then who are they here for?" The prisoner lifted his head slowly beneath the hood. "You." Outside, the sedan's doors opened. And what stepped out onto that lonely stretch of road was the last thing any officer expected to see. The final hours of the Darrington to Angola transfer are the ones officers still choose their words carefully about. Not because anything violent happened, nothing like that, but because the decisions made inside those hours shaped how future high-risk transports across state lines would work. And for years, the details stayed locked away in quiet conversations and black ink reports. As the convoy rolled into Louisiana, the lead supervisor noticed something that bothered him: a communication delay between the escort vehicles. Radios were crackling, signals were dropping, and the timing of each checkpoint report was slipping by seconds. It wasn't dangerous, but it was enough to make every officer on that route feel the pressure. When moving someone classified as high priority, timing and coordination matter more than anything. A moment of silence on the radio can feel like an hour. One officer later admitted that this was the first time he truly understood how many things could go wrong even without anything dramatic happening at all. A loose radio cable, a misread map marker, or a slow response from a checkpoint can change an entire mission. And according to several anonymous staff members, this was the moment the escort team realized something bigger. The system they relied on was outdated. The convoy continued along a narrow two-lane road leading to Angola. The landscape changed from city stretches to thick fields and quiet farmland, the kind of isolation that makes any officer hyper-aware. But the ride itself stayed calm. No interruptions, no surprises, just a tense quiet that stayed with the team long after. Hours later, at the gates of Angola, a procedural review began, standard, but unusually intense that day. Officials from both states met to evaluate the transport logs. That's where the real story emerges. The officers didn't talk about the inmate nearly as much as they talked about the system. The lagging radios, the route confusion, the communication delay at the border, and the number of times they had to rely on backup plans that almost weren't there. It wasn't dramatic enough for news headlines, but for the people responsible for safety, it was a wake-up call. They pushed for reforms, better equipment, clearer routes, and updated policies for cross-state transfers. And here's the part they don't usually say out loud. Those reforms did happen, quietly, over the next few years. Modern GPS standards were introduced. Communication protocols were tightened. Joint state coordination became mandatory instead of optional. All because of a day when nothing went wrong, but almost everything could have. That's the real reason officers rarely talk about the Darrington to Angola transfer. They're not hiding a dramatic event. They're acknowledging a near miss on a structural level. The type of situation that forces people to rethink how the system works without ever becoming a dramatic story. And the inmate? He arrived safely, processed smoothly, and moved into a standard classification path. The focus of the story was never about him, but about the officers who realized their tools and systems needed to evolve. What they experienced changed how high-risk transfers are handled across multiple states, and some of the protocols developed after that day are still used today. So when people say officers refuse to talk about it, they not covering up anything dark. They avoiding the uncomfortable truth that even the most professional teams can be caught off guard by outdated systems. And sometimes, the transfers that change history aren't the ones filled with dramatic moments. They're the ones that reveal weaknesses no one noticed before. If you enjoyed this breakdown, like the video, hit subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss these deep dive stories again. And tell us in the comments, which prison-to-prison transfer should we uncover next?